in whatever sport is your choice. Okay, we're going to have a great night. And in case you forgot, there is beer. You might need it. So, as you know, athletes fear injury pretty much more than anything else. We'll accept failure before we accept injury. But the problem with that is that we're also human beings, so we're fallible. And in addition to physical issues that we have to deal with, we also have to deal with a lot of emotional issues that come up, especially as it pertains to injury. So tonight, the goal is to walk us through various stages of injury from diagnosis. We're going to start at the clinical side. Diagnosis, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I see? And then we're going to kind of tread on some emotional territory tonight, and I hope that you'll share some of your stories. We're going to talk about things to do when you don't think you can do anything. And we're going to talk about some stories of panel members up here who have been in that situation numerous times and have lived to tell about it and have come out on the other side. And every one of these coaches and experts up here, at some point in their life, have also been injured. And I know that every one of them, in one form or another, will be able to tell you that while it may have stopped them in their tracks, it also was a tremendous gift. So I hope tonight that even in the midst of your darkness and your frustration, that you also get to leave here and unwrap some kind of a gift from tonight's talk. So we have the benefit of having 5 of the most amazing professionals in Austin. We've got an injury recovery coach, we've got a strength and conditioning coach, we have a former NFL star and an entrepreneur, we have a sports doctor, a doctor of chiropractic, and we also have a sports psychologist. This package doesn't get any more complete. So, so thank you for being here, and before we even start, please give them a round of applause as I get ready to introduce them. Our first panelist, and I'm going in alphabetical order tonight, is Heidi Armstrong, the chick on the panel. Otherwise known as Dude to me. So if I slip and say Dude, that's me. Yeah, I'm a little Dude. Heidi has been an athlete for as long as she can remember. She grew up on the back of a horse, competing for over a decade in 3-day eventing. She was a senior national level swimmer, competing for 13 years. And she has been racing bikes, both road, mountain bikes, and that on a professional level for 21 years. Also following a 17-year hiatus from the pool, Heidi recently, in the last couple of years, returned to the water and fell in love with distance open water swimming. In November 2010, Heidi had a Nordic ski racing accident and has since endured 8 surgeries. She began to scientifically research injury with a diverse group of athletes and healthcare providers, uncovering some of the most common challenges and recipes for success. And fortunately for all of us, this has led to the creation of her business, the Injured Athletes Toolbox. As an injury recovery coach, she works with injured athletes from around the world, and here's what some of the things that she tries to do. She empowers them to overcome emotional fallout. She recommends a proper care team of skilled providers. She identifies activities that are injury-friendly and physical therapists approved. She can help you prepare for doctor's appointments and navigate the nightmarish health insurance system. And she can also provide some one-on-one coaching with both swimming and cycling instruction. Heidi Armstrong. Braden from Training for the Game is a strength and conditioning coach. He was born in Morristown, New Jersey, grew up in Houston. He earned his undergraduate degree from Texas A&M in 2002, human nutrition, and his graduate degree in exercise physiology, sports sciences, and nutrition from UT Austin in 2005. While he was at UT, Braden worked with some of the finest in the strength and conditioning field, including Jeff Mad Dog Madden, who you guys always see running out on UT home games, and also Todd Wright from the basketball team. Chris was part of a staff on the football team that helped produce 2 consecutive Rose Bowls, including a BCS national championship, and 29 NFL draft picks. Upon graduation, Chris was offered a full-time position as an assistant basketball strength and conditioning coach, serving underneath head basketball coach, coaches Rick Barnes and Jody Conrad. Before moving back and joining Train for the Game here in Austin, Braden was also head strength and conditioning coach for the men's basketball team at Texas Tech under Bobby Knight. Right now at Train for the Game, Braden works with people of all levels and all ages, from middle school to professional athletes. They employ the work and research of Gary Gray from the Gray Institute using applied functional science, which ultimately sees the body as a sequence of chain reactions. We'll get more into that a little bit later on, but please, round of applause for Chris Braden. Brian DeMarco is the co-founder of Primal 7. He experienced a career-ending injury and almost a life-ending injury, which we'll hear about, in the NFL that took him from elite athlete to completely bedridden. Driven by an undying desire to be a husband to his wife Autumn and a father to his young children, his family set out on a journey to discover the power of faith, relationships, and self-discovery. After a 7-year road to recovery, Brian and Autumn co-founded Primal 7 to inspire hope and improve the quality of life for others by sharing the gift of movement. Brian DeMarco. Dr. Chris Sellers from Performance Wellness. Dr. Sellers and his team restore and maintain patient health by offering safe and natural healing through non-surgical, drug-free treatment of pain and injury, including chiropractic care, ART, which stands for active release technique, functional dry needling, acupuncture, and massage therapy. As a native Houstonian, Dr. Sellers graduated cum laude from the Texas Chiropractic College, receiving his doctorate of chiropractic. His education included a 4-year internship in a sports medicine clinic, 3-month neurosurgery rotation, and a 2-month ER hospital rotation. In 1993, he received his Bachelor's of Science in Biomedical Engineering from Texas A&M. Dr. Sellers is a member of the Texas Chiropractic Association and the American Chiropractic Association. He's currently an instructor and official Ironman provider of ART, of the spine, upper extremity, lower extremity, and nerve entrapment. Thank you, Dr. Sellers. And finally, now that we have no more room for questions, I'm just introducing the panel and then we're gone. No. Finally, Dr. Tim Zeddies. Dr. Zeddies is a licensed psychologist who has worked in the field of sports psychology for 10 years as a professor, a consultant for teams and individuals, performance enhancement coach, advisor, diagnostician, and psychotherapist. He works with athletes across all sports and all competitive levels, including high school, college, professional, elite, as well as fitness-minded and driven adults who want to improve their athletic performance and fitness. In doing so, he hopes that his patients cope more effectively with sport and event-related anxiety. He increases focus and concentration while learning how to decrease and eliminate distractions. He enhances satisfaction with sports and event-related participation. And he's here to improve post-injury performance and effectiveness. Dr. Zed. I'm going to open it up with a common question. My knee hurts, my IT band hurts, my back hurts, this hurts, that hurts. Where do we start? So something hurts. Dr. Sellers, where should we start? Who do we see first?
Well, I think that question all depends on what type of athlete you're dealing with. So if it's the seasoned athlete, a lot of people get good responses from people that they're training with or things they remember in the past about what they've done. For new athletes that doesn't have the past to draw on, it's probably good to either go seek some help, just ask them, because it's better to get help before things start to kind of run away and get compensation issues. So I would think that for a seasoned athlete, they can usually determine, is this something that I need to see a professional for? by trying a couple things. They know it doesn't within a time period. It's easy for the new athlete who doesn't know the tricks of fixing icy knee problems with back pain. And I think it's a good idea to need some help so things don't get worse in the back when they go on.
And Chris, where is that first line of defense? Who would that first person be?
Well, it's a good question because it depends on who you know, who you have access to. We tend to trust those who have been down the road before, and the best person to go to first is somebody who's been down that injury road, and find a friend and see who they've had success with. You'll find a myriad of different people doing different techniques, whether it be just soft tissue therapy. You'll see some movement specialists out there that tend to really combine those together. But finding somebody who has a technique matching that technique to what you got going on is important. But more importantly, I use the analogy all the time of making sure that Doc brought up that knee pain. That's kind of say again. Oh, it's really loud right here. So I'm doing well. Oh, cool. I'll just stand up and get away from you. There you go. I'm better standing anyway. We use the analogy all the time of, it's a knee pain, slapping the knee, that's a bad knee, my knees hurt. Well, that's usually the victim is always the one screaming. But out in the world, the criminals kind of lie in wait. They don't necessarily make themselves so totally visible. So finding somebody, whether it be a tissue therapist, chiropractor, massage therapist, a personal trainer who has the appropriate skill sets to try to identify really where the real criminals are, where those causes are, not just the compensations that are the pain areas. I think is your first step to trying to not only find the person, but also create a strategy what you're going to attack that with, and all the different modalities and things those folks are going to do to try to help you along the road to recover. I'll be louder next time.
And I'm just going to go over because I'm going to address Heidi on this next question, which is, so for those of us that have what I would consider common injuries, nothing that's acute. So we've got, an acute injury or where we fall on our mountain bike and something breaks, versus an overuse kind of chronic nagging injury, which I think a lot of us have, whether it's a nagging IT issue or a hamstring piriformis issue. How long should we wait and do our own self-care, foam rolling or Epsom salt baths, et cetera, et cetera? How long should we do this on our own before we seek help? Is there a timeline?
The recommendation passed on to me from Dr. John McDonald, who's an orthopedic surgeon in Austin, is 6 weeks. And he and I have talked about this. And acupuncture is extremely helpful and a great tool, as is massage therapy, as is chiropractic care. But if you find yourself not getting better after 6 weeks, it's time to change something and to see somebody different. And the starting point for healing, your body at least, is getting an accurate diagnosis. That's the foundation upon which your healing can begin. And so if you're not getting an accurate diagnosis by seeing a bunch of other people, it's time to go see a medical doctor and maybe get some testing or something. So 6 weeks.
And Dr. Zeddies, I feel like Philadelphia, you just running back and forth. Tim, why are we we're just so stubborn? Why do we wait so long to seek help? What's our problem?
Well, that's a great question, actually. As athletes, we're taught to go. We're not taught to stop. Am I being heard? Okay, all right, let me repeat that. As athletes, we're taught to go. We're not taught to stop. And when you've been doing something for so long, you get that into your mindset so much that you kind of stop paying attention to your body when it's sending you signals to slow down. Now, in my particular practice, what I have found is that men tend to be worse than women when it comes to this. The same can probably be said on a whole host of behavioral and emotional tendencies. Although I'm biased, I have 3 daughters and a wife, and so that point of view helps me at home, and it also helps me in the office.
But when it comes to recognizing the fact that we're injured, we don't want to do that, because what does injury mean? Injury means, uh-oh, I'm going to have to slow down. In fact, how many of you have had the thought whenever you tweak something, oh no, what's my next workout going to be? Am I going to be able to train? You know, do I need to stop for crying out loud in the middle of the step that I'm doing? And so again, we're trained to push it so much that the neurons and the behavioral tendencies associated with slowing down and assessing our bodies, assessing the situation, assessing whether or not we're doing further damage, just aren't reinforced nearly to the extent as going as hard as you can.
And Dr. Sellers, how do we know what we need at first? Whether it is just some massage therapy, an ART session, how do we know?
Kind of like Heidi was saying. I mean, the way we deal with it when I talk to people is if you can deal with the issue yourself, as far as the trigger point ball, some stretching, some icing, some time off, and that injury doesn't come back, then you're probably okay. If you can't deal with that, or you can't change your symptoms to meet your expectations for training or swimming or running or whatever you're doing, then you need to seek some help so you can get one past the physical aspect, but also this aspect of thinking that you can't do it. So I usually tell people when I said 6 weeks is the basic time that the way we talk to people, we like, well, give yourself a couple weeks. Try it. If it doesn't work, let's get in there and find out what's going on with this problem.
And I'll just leave the question with you, actually, Dr. Sellers. What are some of your biggest challenges as a healthcare practitioner when working with injured athletes? What are some of, we know we have our frustrations. What are some of yours as the doctor?
Exactly what we just talked about. is getting someone to understand what's going on, what the problem is, and what the plan is. And getting them to trust you and think this plan is appropriate to meet your needs. And I think that's the biggest hurdle, is because, I was telling Heidi earlier, everyone that comes in has a but with what's going on. I have this problem, but I'm racing this week, or I'm training for this. So there's always some other issue or another hurdle that we have to get past. And I think that's probably the biggest issue is getting people to listen and understand that this might take some time. If there needs some downtime, we're going to set short-term, we're going to set long-term goals and stuff. But I think that's the most difficult time is getting someone to realize that, hey, you're injured. And that thing that's happening in 2 days is not going to happen.
And Brian, your injury the main injury was acute trauma during a game. And what did you do? What happened after your injury?
Mentally,
I guess we'll start physically with some of the rehab that was attempted.
well, first of all, these guys are the real experts up here. I have my experience, so if that helps, hopefully it'll help some folks out there. So, sorry. So my final hit, so to speak, was I kind of did a reverse toe touch. So I got hit in the back of my legs, speared head to head, reverse toe touch, 17 spinal fractures, golden fracture in my hip, up and nuts. So it was a little bit different. So it's instantly everything changes right there. So the question is, what did I do, or what did I go through? I mean, I definitely knew it was over, and I definitely knew it was over. So it puts you in this mental state where, especially at that level, it was everything that I knew, everything that I ever wanted to be or aspired to be. It was all my identity. We'll talk about that later. It was everything in that moment. So it was a complete loss, and all things, emotional, physical, and nuts.
And we will absolutely address a lot of these emotional issues in the next session of when we get to the next topic. But Tim, when somebody comes to you broken, emotionally or physically, how do you know if you're a good fit with them from a healthcare standpoint?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's going to differ depending on whether you're doing chiropractic or psychology, because a lot of what I do, if not most of what I do, is hands-off. It's all talking. And athletes, God bless us, we're doers. We're not talkers. And so getting somebody to talk about what's going on with them physically, emotionally, psychologically, it's not an easy thing to do. And in the situation that you talked about, Brian, sometimes we have to treat it when it's to that extent as though a trauma happened. And the athlete is not only experiencing feelings of disappointment, of not being able to play or not being able to train as much as they're used to, but they're also maybe experiencing symptoms on the level of PTSD that need to be looked at. And so the barometer for whether or not we're a good fit usually has to do with how much they start to open up to me over time. And so what I try to do very quickly within the first 5 minutes of the appointment is to connect to them in some way, to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel at ease. We might not even begin to talk about in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the session, what the specific injury is. We'll kind of get around to that. Establishing a human connection through empathic listening and asking the right kinds of questions, I think, is the best place to start. Whether that person is ready, however, to talk about what's going on with them is a separate matter that needs to be assessed in an ongoing way.
Just an additional question to that: do you think it's important that if an athlete is going through physical health care through with medical doctors, is it equally important that they see somebody like you to address some of these emotional issues?
Yeah, I think it can be. I'm a big believer in a team approach when it comes to healthcare, where a psychologist or a sports psychologist works actively and in an ongoing fashion with chiropractors, with team trainers. Because a lot of times what will happen is that an athlete is so down or so depressed or so out of sorts about their particular injury that not only will they kind of start to close up and not want to talk about it, but they won't participate as vigorously in their rehab. And so the first line you're going to see is probably the chiropractor or the team's trainer or the primary care physician, where they either don't show up for their rehab, they're late, they don't seem to be really participating in it as much, if it's a career-ending injury for sure, or even a season-ending injury. There's got to be some sort of an assessment of what's going on with them emotionally, because that is going to impact the feedback.
And Heidi, as an injury recovery coach, how do you recommend athletes start to move forward?
The one that we're going to pull up a visual. That's the one with the green.
After athletes get injured, and Timmy's talked about this a bit, but it's almost like you watch your whole identity just wash away. And everything that you use to connect with your friends, and all of a sudden your body has let you down. The thing that you use to connect with your life and your friends has failed you. And you feel anxious because you used exercise as a means of coping with things. And I think that the first step in going through injury is going through the stages of grief. And this is where someone like Tim can come in. If you feel like you can't get past this, if you need to have a breakdown, if you need to scream, if you need to cry, you have to get to that point of acceptance before you can ever move forward. And what I tell my clients is make a promise to yourself of how long you want this to take. And everybody's different. And it's, by the way, it's not linear. You can go from minute to minute, hour to hour, back and forth between these things. But if you feel like you cannot get to the point of accepting your injury after X number of days, then it's time to seek help from a mental health professional to help you move forward. Because unless you do that, you can't go anywhere, because your body follows your mind. So if your mind is in a ditch, your body will never get better.
And Chris, since I'm standing next to you, are chronic overuse injuries just part of sport? Is this just something we have to succumb to?
I'll try to refer to that speaker. Yes and no. It depends on how we prepare, and it depends on what we do as an athlete. So, as a show of hands, like we mostly endurance athletes here. Shout out a couple of things that you do besides endurance athletes. Anything else? Track, speed. All right, so tennis, awesome. CrossFit, awesome. That's it. Martial, okay. All right, let's stand that. So, in terms of how we prepare for these things, hopefully you guys are here today, so I think the preparation piece is probably going to be there. But being smart about the preparation piece will hopefully take you out of that chronic overuse cycle. The pure nature, we had a pretty big show of hands with the endurance piece, but the very nature of a lot of the endurance stuff is very linear, and it's very repetitive, and it's going to grind it. And it's not just a mental grind, it's not a test to, but it's physically going to sort of grind, especially if you have any what I just call hiccups somewhere along the chain in the body that are causing just a little bit of a mechanical, it can be really insignificant in terms of, even looking at like a subtalar joint, seeing what's going on there. It might seem insignificant amount of lack of mobility there. All of a sudden, you throw major mileage on top of that, from the princess and the pea phenomenon. So some major mileage on top of that, all of a sudden you got a chronic overuse injury. So in that sense, if we don't kind of prepare our bodies and think of it as an integrated unit, we're going to move in a very multi-directional manner aside from what we're doing, say from our distance running, then we're setting ourselves up structurally to kind of get some of those things. By taking care of ourselves post-run or pre-run, in terms of how you prepare, then you're very much kind of setting the stage, if you will, to kind of get some of those injuries that you hear all the time. You see people that look like $1 million, right? And they're just chiseled, and they, "Hi, how you doing? You look great. Oh, I'm doing great. How you feeling? Oh, my knee's killing me, and and I got this thing in my foot, and it's weird. My shoulder, I can't put my arm here, but I mean, really, you should see my times. I'm doing better than I've ever done, And so we have to begin to kind of wonder. I know with athletes, we're trying to get out there and we're trying to get it done. I think I start to think about, like, number one, why am I doing this? And then if I'm doing this really for the environment or the culture that I create, my friends are in this group, I have to figure out a way to sustain this. And my opinion is that if you're not banged up right now, that you need to think about preparing the right way so you can stay that way. And then if you do get banged up, I'm a huge proponent of ART. We've got a couple of tissue therapists in our shop. And what they can do in terms of addressing the soft tissue stuff is really, really impressive. And that's purely just based on my experience with these guys and their skill sets. It doesn't have to be part of it. It doesn't have to be part of it, the chronic piece, but it often is. If we just don't take care of ourselves and don't prepare the right way. I think there's probably other questions that we'll probably get into preparation. Right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks.
And before we start to move on to the solution basis of movement and therapy, I just want to do a quick rundown of the panelists on what's your number one piece of advice for injured athletes right now?
So you gave me this question ahead of time, so I should have an answer. Find somebody that you trust right out of the gates. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it's a massage therapist. Find somebody that you trust and make them show you results in the appropriate amount of time that they've already outlined. You'll feel good about your decision to go to them out of the gates because you have a trust with them, or somebody that you trust them very much. And then if they don't show you a solution, you'll find somebody else. Ask people that that this should be in the know. You know, ask these folks who this is their business of finding solutions for people, because they don't get paid unless they find solutions for folks. They're enough than us, and these guys over here. And then, you know, once you get past that sort of trusting person, they haven't done it for you. You go get somebody that does it for them, and then find other folks and surround themselves with a team of people that have numerous resources that they can kind of get your case and wrap their head around what you have going on, and maybe they can help you or they can refer out.
The part of your brain that makes you a great athlete and makes you focus and get up and go run at sunrise or work out when you don't want to is not usually going to serve you well when you're injured. So if you can use a different part of your brain, do something creative, get into a different part of your brain. And as an athlete, oftentimes we have to say no to things all the time. No to a concert, no to social engagement because of training. So go do something different. Take classes. If there's something you've always wanted to explore or learn about, go take a class and learn how to do it. Cooking, if you've always wanted to learn how to cook, learn how to cook. So just do something different and do something creative. And by creative, I mean something different than your sport. Write notes to people that express your gratitude for them helping you in your life, not necessarily just for your injury, but get out of that part of your brain that's about driving through pain and keeping you moving forward. You have to get into the creative part of your brain. In my research, I spent several hundred hours doing research with injured athletes in all sports, sexes, ages, abilities, and the one recipe for success that was common across all of the people that made it through their injury and came out the other end mentally stronger was they did something creative. We're way more than just athletes, all of us here, and we tend to just think of ourselves in that one dimension, but as human beings, we have so many dimensions, so go explore another part of who you are as a person.
What was the question again?
Your number one advice for injured athletes.
I would say that the best thing to do is what I've seen. I think most soft tissue injuries, I mean chronic injuries, are pretty easy to diagnose and get rid of. The hard part, I think, is changing the movement patterns that you actually do. I think the hardest thing is that people won't follow the plan of the rehab, the functional movement, the strengthening. If an injured athlete, I think that's the most important part is cross-training, doing something different. You know, getting away from the standard thing that you do. And I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
And I can say as a testament to that, the folks that train for the game have put me back together on numerous occasions by making me move in different planes of motion rather than just forwards and backwards. So a huge testament and testimony for me to them. Brian, your number one advice for injured athlete?
Well, hearing all these guys talk up there, I guess, I look at injury in a couple different ways. There's the injury that you're going to get over, and I've had plenty of those, and there's the injury that you're not going to get over. It changes everything. But I think that biggest piece of advice would be to decide to number one, if it's the injury you're going to get over, you make a decision. It's filled with action. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that understand movement and all categories. And I think on the other end, what I dealt with was two very distinct decisions. And for me personally, one was to follow Christ, and the other was to make a decision that I was going to get better. And I know that people say that stuff all the time, and it's just, okay, I made this decision, that's positive, it's great. But my decisions, make a decision filled with action. This is a plan. You need to build momentum. You need to keep moving forward. So I think people underestimate the power of thought and deciding that you're going to be better. For me, when, every thought in my head and everybody around me was telling me I was never going to walk again on my own. So I got to that point where I made a decision where I would verbally say it. I know sometimes I sound like a crazy person, but I would yell out, I'm going to walk again, I'm going to run again, I'm going to do this. And That's what works. That power of your mind. To start creating that momentum, to start moving forward. That's
Just to build on what you're saying, all of which I think is great, awesome, is to use injuries as an opportunity. If we deny, to kind of go back to what I think is a very helpful way of looking at this, if we go back to what's on the board right now, and if we engage in denial, it's kind of like arguing or trying to argue with the hurricane. Guess who's going to win? The hurricane's going to win every single time. If you try to argue with an injury, you're going to lose. And so one of the things I try to get athletes to accept, and it's not easy, is to feel fortunate or to have gratitude for the opportunity to do what the injury is now forcing them to do. And whether that involves doing something creative in a field that has nothing to do with athletics, something that they've always thought that they would like to do and never quite had the time for because of training. Maybe it means doing a different kind of a workout. I remember when I got injured not too long ago, I couldn't do a whole lot. And I thought, oh, this Pilates thing seems pretty easy. I think I can do it. Well, I learned, first of all, it's not very easy at all for those of you who've done Pilates. Not being able to walk in a straight line the next day proved that to me. But it also taught me that there's so much out there in the way of exercise that we can explore. And oftentimes we don't, because we're so focused on one particular goal that we only do the exercise-related activities that we think are going to help us achieve that goal. And in the process of doing so, we forget about or ignore so many other things that we can do to have a healthy body. I think, is it Chris?
Yes.
What you said, I see all the time. Somebody will go out and have a PR in a particular lift, or they'll run for so many yards, but they feel like shit for the next 23 hours. And so, what kind of life is that if you're not enjoying yourself, except that 1 hour or 3 hour span of time once a week? And so I think it gives us an opportunity to reassess what our values are, and whether or not we're doing something that's healthy for us from a mental and physical perspective.
Fantastic. I want to shift now into a little bit of the solutions that we've been alluding to with movements and finding other alternatives and social networks and things like that. But Brian, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about when you were at your lowest. You were telling me before this talk, you were 450 pounds, you were on the couch, and you were immobile, literally immobile, and God love your wife, Autumn, who took care of you through all of this. And people, like you said you would never walk again. And now you are here walking, walked right in. And you've developed a system called Primal 7. And it's all about movement. You're not a linebacker anymore, or like you're not... Yeah, you're not crushing bones on the football field anymore. You're doing simple movements, and it's giving you your life back. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, she mentioned Primal 7, and one of the things we talk about all the time is we need to train like we live, and train like we play, and that's one of the things that has been great working with the NBA teams and all these great athletes on that end, but also on all the way to the huge side too, where it's, listen, we need to learn how to do a squat. We've lived such sedentary lifestyles, sitting all day long, typing away on our little iPhones and stuff, that we have somewhere along the line forgot how to move properly. And one of the things that was beneficial with Autumn and I this whole journey, listen, when you're as hurt as I was, and we literally lost everything. I mean, we're battling homelessness, it was the whole gamut. So when we started this journey, when we made a decision to be better, it was every ounce of energy we had. So part of that was the education component of this, and what went into Primal 7. So, Primal 7 started with a real simple prayer. It was, I saw supposedly two of the best docs in the country, that remain nameless. They studied me for a week, and they literally walked back in the room, looked at my wife and I and said, if you were a horse, we would have shot you by now. It's really funny. They actually said that to us. So we were putting everything we had. We were coming back to Austin with 2 young kids in the house, and how are we going to feed them? People over there. Daddy just wanted to get back to work, and at this time, I just wanted to be a man. I wanted to be a dad and a husband. It wasn't about some big football thing. But getting back to this, and we get back to the 4th set day from that, and that's literally how Primal was born. It was a real simple prayer. It was, God, if you're really there, I need a way to move or I'm going to die. I was literally, I was so sedentary at the time, I was wearing full-time balloon bats. And if you don't know what those are, I was wearing vacuums on my backside, and I had gaping holes in my hips that torn through flesh. So that's how sedentary I was, 450 pounds. I lost 90% of the function of my right leg. So I was a mess. Right? So in Primal 7, literally born out of that simple prayer, but more importantly, in that decision was to, in this quest to move again. My right leg was atrophied. My thoughts as a football player, and I'll be around these great trainers and coaches, I need to do squats again, but now it's morbidly obese and disabled. Am I going to squat? And how do I need to squat properly? So we started to study. And once we understood the biomechanics of the core, and once again, I know most everybody here understands what I'm saying when I say core, but most people are thinking abs, right? So I can remove your arms, your legs, what's left. But understanding the biomechanics of the core and its relationship to the entire kinetic chain. So this up here, this pursuit of this decision to how do we do these movements, as simple as it sounds. I heard you talking earlier when we got in here about watching young kids squat, babies squat perfectly. And what happens, right? What happened to all of us? But it was being on that mission to learn and educate and move again and move properly.
And Chris Braden, it sounds very similar to the philosophy that you employ with Gary Gray and his techniques. Explain a little bit about the 3 different planes of motion, which I assume with Primal 7 you're also exploring, and how that benefits us.
Sure. She mentioned the Gray Institute a couple times. These guys are it's a group out of Michigan, actually, that they're really good. They're physical therapists in training. And they've been doing it for years. They really sort of ground a lot of their philosophies on understanding that I'll go back a second. Function as a word is kind of a buzzword in our professional circles, and it's completely passed at this point. You say functional trainer, functional whatever, it's anywhere from stand on a wallboard, close your eyes. And we try to boil it down really to 2 things, and it kind of echoes some of the things you've already heard. It's individual, so what do you got going on? We all, certainly we're human beings, and we have very similar structures, but we all have, albeit small differences, maybe structurally, but significant when it comes to actually how we move. And then we function secondly boil down kind of task specificity. So what do you want to do with your body, or what do you ask them to do every day? Are you a mechanic? Are you on your back all day long? Are you leaning up and getting in the car? Are you ART chiro? Are you kind of over the top of somebody a lot doing adjustments? There's a lot of different actions that you're going to go through with your given occupation, with given things you like to do. And so approaching movement from that perspective, understanding the individuality, understanding task specificity, and then getting to look at the body. Carrie mentioned it sort of as a chain reaction. What happens when the foot hits the ground? And then where are things going right? Where are things going wrong? The plane of motion approach that Carrie talks about is a piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of these folks out there that and we're very much in line with this as well. They want to 3D everything. And there's a lot of power in that. And by 3D, I mean we move. There's 3 main directions that we can move. We can move globally, our bodies forward and backwards in the side of the plane, which you take a lot of running and stuff like that. We can move. Tennis is a great game. We had some people hold their hand up. You can move side to side, anything laterally, or we can certainly move anything rotationally. That happens at a global level, but it certainly also happens at a much more finite level. So every single joint, every single bone within your body is always moving. It's summating all those things. It's summating all those planes of motion all at the same time whenever you make any kind of motion. So recognizing that, being able to tease out, if you will, where some of the issues are, not only, we talked about the criminal and victim analogy, not only, identifying what hurts and what's causing it, and then not only what's causing it, but, is there a particular direction, if you will, that bothers you more, or is there a stickiness, if you will, a particular plane of motion with respect to a hip, or we mentioned before, septum, that's more the triplanar approach. We kind of look at those different directions, recognizing that's how you move. We look at the structure you mentioned before. I use a wheel analogy all the time to try to help people understand why they see us doing some of the things that we do. If you took the tire off of your car as you came in here and you looked at purely the structure of the wheel, intuitively, all being intelligent individuals, you'd say, that thing is designed, that thing's going to move efficiently. I'm going to roll it. I won't flip it. It's the same thing with the way you're put together. If you just look at the structure of the body, just kind of globally, not really diving in individually, but you can see tissues that are running vertically. You see tissues running, in a pure horizontal manner, but a lot of them are running at these kind of diagonal or oblique angles. And yet, when we see that, and you use the wheel analogy to say that's designed to roll, you look at that structure and you say that structure is designed to move in all these different directions. Yet commonly, we don't reach in different verticalities. We don't reach in different directions when we do our exercise, whether it be preparatory or whether it be the actual competition. So doing something or a movement, if you will, that's more authentic to the structure itself, we find is a great strategy for preparing. This whole thing about injury, preparing to try to eliminate the injuries, and somewhat in the restoration process, albeit usually after some soft tissue stuff has been addressed. In that sense, you begin to get more of a better feel for, hey, maybe I should be moving a bit more authentic to my structure, and getting ready to do whatever it is I like to do, and not feel like crap for 24 hours out of that. Right? Because again, if you're seeking vitality, which I think we all are, that's this athletic piece is a piece of it. It engages in these communities. But if you can't stay consistently engaged or be a great dad and you go home as a result of, I just feel like shit. You mean to your kids and before you know you get divorced, just because you were sore. so just, it won't go that direction, seriously. But I'm going to stop talking.
We'll be here all week, ladies and gentlemen. But here's the problem with that. That's great. That's, we want to, learn how to move functionally and properly. But the problem with that, and I want to ask this of Heidi, is like all my friends are out on bike rides, and I'm like trying to lift, a grape off the ground and put it, in a basket. That's no fun. I still don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, why is it dangerous to make our sports our identity? And what is it, like, how can I get over that, like, I'm hating this, why? I should be in the pool right now. So help us out with that.
Heidi brought visuals.
This man back here, Lawrence, Wave, I love this man. He's so wise, and he's been through life-threatening injuries. And I had a seminar last year, and there were all these young people there, and they were injured, and they were frustrated and pissed off, and they hated the world. And Lawrence said, you know what? There's a whole world outside of your sport. You need to go live it. And people looked at him like, how dare you say that? How dare you? You just threatened my identity. Get the hell out of here. Like, people were so angry at him for saying that. But it's so true. And I said this before, that we are so much more than athletes. And the opportunity in injury is to prune your life like you prune a tree. And maybe but when an arborist comes and looks at a tree, they look up and they see what branches need a little bit more light to sustain this tree into the future, and what branches need to be pruned, what branches need to go. And that branch inside of you, that when you say, hi, I'm Chuck, I'm a triathlete, that branch has to go, because that's not sustainable for the rest of your life. You are so much more than that. And so what do you do when your friends are out riding and racing and you're stuck at home laying in the CPM, moving your leg back and forth on the sofa because you've just had knee surgery? This is what you do. There's actually something missing from the top here, but that's okay. Huh? Yeah. Yeah.
One more thing to think about.
So the top of this is actually acceptance. It's been cut off, but the 5 stages of grief, I said you have to reach acceptance. This is why you have to reach acceptance. People say, oh, you need to just change your attitude. You need to have a positive attitude. You need to change your mind. And I call BS on that, because it's impossible to do unless you do the 2 things before that. So the first thing is acceptance. You have to reach that. Setting reasonable goals. So you can't move in the way that you want to move, but there's still ways that you can move. So talk to your physical therapist, talk to your chiropractor, and figure out ways that you can move that are safe. Because you'll find that as much as you fight it to begin with, when you begin to move in other ways, it will make you feel the same way your sport did. And you don't believe me and you think I'm crazy, but I promise it's true. So maybe all you can do is yoga in a chair, yoga on the floor. Maybe you can aqua jog if you're a runner. But there are always other things that you can do, and that also feeds what I said earlier, which is doing something creative and using your brain in different ways. Once you set reasonable goals that are respectful to your injury, then you can have a positive attitude. And if you repeat that cycle of accepting where you are, setting reasonable goals with your medical team, you will end up with a positive attitude.
Awesome. So I want to address the emotional conversations that we have to have, or that oftentimes we're afraid to have. As athletes, we're like, I'm good, it hurts, but we very rarely want to delve into the emotional aspect of being injured. And so I want to address these questions for Dr. Sellers and Dr. Zeddies, who are somewhat at the opposite ends of the spectrum. We've got our clinician who is there to just issue a protocol to make you better physically, and then we have our sports psychologist who is dealing with the other side that we don't often like to talk about with other people. Chris, are you comfortable when people bring emotional conversations to you, or do they just leave that off the table most of the time?
I think it took me a while to get comfortable with that. So that's something we didn't learn in school, for sure. And I would say every athlete or any person that comes in injured has some emotional baggage with them. And learning to read the person and understand and be empathetic with them, it's something I've learned in the last 14 years. And I think that the hat of the clinician is, I've found out, it's about 25% of what I do. So for the one part. But the other aspect of dealing with people's emotions and being a positive ray for them to feed off of is the biggest portion of what I do. So I mean, it's been a learned thing for me to learn that, is to give people the right things to do, but be a positive aspect of getting them to there, letting them know that things are going to be okay. You're going to get there. You know, we're going to take these small steps. You're going to run 2 1s next time. You're going to do this. You're going to do that, and be always the positive person. And that's really important.
And Dr. Zeddies, does emotional recovery and acceptance begin the healing process of the physical injury?
Well, sure. I just want to echo what was just being said, because I think it's really important stuff. And you don't have to be a psychologist to, use and have a connection
and the emotions that are being talked about. In fact, I don't know how many trainers are out there, or how many coaches are out there. But in the work that I do, sometimes it's directly with an athlete, but oftentimes the athlete will open up more to the trainer or the strength and conditioning coach than anybody. And in the teams that I've worked with, the best work that I feel like I've done is when I've had a really good relationship with the strength and conditioning coach or the trainers that are working directly, because there's something about the bond that develops between an athlete and their coach or their strength and conditioning person or their trainer that allows them to open up in a way that is very difficult, if not in some ways impossible to replicate in a somewhat more clinical setting, such as what I work with. And so taking a team approach is really important, so that no matter if the athlete is talking to me or the chiropractor or the coach or the trainer, there is an acceptance and an encouragement for them to talk about their feelings, because not just with athletes, but as people, if you really feel that somebody is looking intently at you when you're talking, or and they're not texting, or they're not distracted by anything else, but they're listening, they're hanging on to every single word that you're saying. Sadly, that's a unique experience, I think. Sometimes in 45-minute to 60-minute sessions in my office, people will disclose so much more emotionally than they do in the other 167 hours of the week, which I think, I know we're not here to talk about culture and to, sort of take a critical view of that, but offering an athlete an opportunity, encouraging her or him to talk about their feelings is at least 50% of what's involved in getting benefits out of what's going on physically.
I'm going to open it up to questions in here in 1 minute, but I want to wrap up my question portion of it by asking each of the panel members very briefly whether you're talking about your injury, and I know Tim, you recently recovered from rhabdomyolysis, and so whether you're dealing about your injury or about the job that you do for other people, what are you most grateful for?
Well, I actually wrote about this for AFM, and when I talk about injuries being an opportunity, I mean that's from personal experience too. And in my particular case, it was pretty scary. I mean, the short version of it, I worked out too hard with really big gun boots, and tried to keep up with them. My wife says I wasn't acting my age, and like many things, she was right. But what I went through, and the dehydration, and a couple of broken bones, and everything like that, put me in a position to where I didn't have a choice about whether I looked at what my priorities were or what I was to be thankful for. I was forced to do that, and so I think it gives us an opportunity to get some perspective, kind of like what was being talked about a little bit before, in terms of how much energy, how much drive we're putting into exercise and fitness, and whether that's taking us away from, quite simply stated, loving in a more open and courageous way to people who are around us.
Gratitude.
Wow, and I think that's absolutely the biggest part. We all don't do that enough, like just to truly be grateful for the things that you do have in your life. But I think, wow, there's a lot. But it's, for me personally, it's my faith, this unbelievable walk I've taken. My wife, Autumn, she's incredible. She's my hero. Right? Can you imagine caring for me 24 hours a day? For that long? I don't think I can take care of myself. Right? So she's absolutely my hero. My children, the ability to be a dad and play tea parties with my little girl. Right? That was my big goal, by the way. But I think this is what would, I think, blow most young athletes away. And because I got this question, I was forced to think about this a lot. Wow, I think all these things that happened to me, but none of them would have happened to me if I didn't have this unbelievably traumatic injury that has put me in a place in my life where I'm grateful for so many things and learning how to, in my world personally, I can kind of simplify it as this: love God, love people. And I was so not that. I was a prototypical professional athlete. Even when I was at my most hurt, it was for me, what about me? It was always about this selfishness, but it was learning how to legitimately care. And I thank God for this. This is what we do now with Primal. I mean, it's just about this getting out there and really helping empower people to live.
Dr. Sellers, what are you most grateful for?
I mean, this is a great town, you know, and I'm grateful that I've come across so many different people. It's changed my life. I told Heidi earlier that, you know, dealing with people at first was tough, but I've grown as an individual. You know, I've learned how to deal with things myself. You know, you see so many different people with so many different injuries from different sports and different ways of getting through them and how they deal with it emotionally. It's been a huge impact on myself. So I think the most grateful thing for me is what I've learned from my parents. You know, like you said, the kids, and you learn how to, you know, take some of that emotional baggage and not take it home. And I've learned that a lot from patients. That's grateful for that.
I'm grateful that I can get up and walk out the door and I can walk wherever I want, because there was a time where I didn't know if that would happen. I'm grateful for my husband Dan, who's been with me through all of this, including a year spent on my back. Here's the holding down the sofa. Here's the knitting, my sister knitting back there, and that kept me sane too. But this experience with my injury led me to connect with athletes from all over the world and uncover the challenges that athletes face that nobody talks about. Nobody addresses these things. And then to find the recipes for success, and then to prove my own life and realize that I'm so many things other than an athlete, so are all of you. And to pass that knowledge on to other athletes who are in the hole, to help them navigate the maze of injury and come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and realize that what they learned from their injury applies to any life challenge.
I think a lot smarter guy than me. One time, I got a conversation with him. He said, you know, if you're honest with yourself, one of the first person that you think of as soon as you wake up every morning is yourself. And if you're really honest, you think about you. When you wake up, immediately, the very first thing is probably you. So I think probably we're inherently pretty selfish. And I think, you know, what I'm grateful for is being given the opportunity to, you know, for people to trust, you know, their bodies, the things that allow them to live a vital life, and say, yeah, you know, can you help me out? Because I'm not able to live the life I want to live. I'm not able to move the way I want to move. And in turn, being a selfish person, which I kind of think we all are, maybe disagree, but I think we're all pretty selfish when we get down to it. But it's a selfish thing to be able to try to help somebody get out of that, because what we get in return is certainly they're getting going to get their life back, if you will, what that is. Gosh, I mean, I feel when somebody comes back and says they have some sort of success, whether it be performance related or just simply, hey, I can get down and, you know, have a tea party with my daughter. I mean, that is just unbelievable in terms of what it does for my soul, my selfish soul. So, you know, I think that's the biggest thing, just being able to help folks who really are searching for an answer. And there's this myriad of stuff out there, you know, there's just so many options, but being able to be a solution for them. And if we feel like we maybe are, you know, maybe outside of our, you know, our capacities, being able to recommend them, you know, to folks just like this on this panel, just be a part of their lives and get them the right spot, you know, so that they can go live their vital life. That's it.
Well, please ask away. You've got like I said, the best professionals here in Austin. Let's use them for free.
Most of the panel members who expressed the fact that they had serious injuries are all very disciplined, very highly motivated people who apparently would have strong wills. At Primal 7, I can't remember your name, Brian, you met unreasonable goals. You set unreasonable goals. If the best doctors in the world told you to just die off, that was an unreasonable goal. So here, let's say, take some old fart like me who has always been an extraordinarily mediocre and now unfit fat old man that's still out there. I lack that kind of willpower that the three of you who have had exceptional injuries have. Otherwise, I wouldn't be fat. So those of you who have tremendous willpower, and I'll go to you, Mr. Primal, how do you set these unreasonable goals and teach other people to have that indomitable will?
Easy question. No, like I said, I can only speak from experience, and to hear, what your thoughts and what you're carrying away from me sharing this brief bit of my story and walking again. This was a process. I mean, I got hurt in 2000. It's now almost 2015, and I just, when did I put down my pain pill last time? 09, and somewhere around there, right? So this has been a journey. I mentioned playing tea parties with my little girl. That was my big goal. I wanted to be able to get down on the ground with my daughter and have her see her daddy get back up under his own power. Because what was happening, if I had to get down on the ground with her, it took bottom, a wall, some kind of makeshift device to kind of pry me down onto the ground and then they get me back and force me back up. So there's incremental goals and making it reasonable for yourself to attach those goals. So everybody talks about those kind of midterm goals, kind of long-term. I didn't have that privilege. I wanted little things. It's like the first Primal 7 we made, for example. Y'all know this. There's 7 primal patterns of human movement. That's why we call it that. Well, push, pull, bend, twist, do, lunge, and squat. Yeah, right? Every movement in life is one of those or a combination of those. That's why we call it that. So very simple movements. I wanted to do a squat. That's where it started. That was my goal. Can I squat? And so building on those on an incremental basis, making them reasonable for yourself. But it's deciding to do it. That was the big thing. I was getting my ass handed to me by life. I mean, it was kicking me in the teeth every single day. My wife was afraid to leave me for 5 minutes because I was going to end it all. That bit of scared of her. We talk about that all the time, right? Right? But so these small incremental goals just make something reasonable. Find what really means something to you. Find a way to put it. And simplify it too, by the way. Simplify that stuff. That's another thing with Primal. It's not complicated. We all do these things. Let's just learn how to do them efficiently. That's the biggest problem. Well, let me tell you something. When you have to find that thing, whatever that is. So for you, if it's family, if it's just being vital, whatever it is. For me, it was my kids and my wife. We all have to find whatever moves us within. Something moves all of us, right? And when you create that first bit of movement, that momentum, and that's what we need, right? And once, it's like the first time I did a squat. I mean, it sounds as simple as that is, but the first time I did a squat, everything's connected, right? My mental state changed. things became possible. So it was that momentum, and it was that very slow build. There were months at that time where I wasn't seeing much progress. But it's just same with it. Again, willpower. But you have to find what matters to you most. And for me, it was my family at the time. And I had to live for them. She deserved a better husband than what she was getting. My kids deserved a better dad than they were getting. So find what it is that drives you. Because it can't be just about looks and selfishness. I'll argue a few points again on selfishness. But it can't be about that, because that's not life. We're all connected. So whether it's your family, your friends, the people around you, learning how that connection can help motivate you to take that next step. Right? Small steps of willpower. Right? It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Right?
I just want to address the comment that you made. As an educator and a coach, we've all been taught that somebody else is going to tell us what we should do. Education is a failure today because we have listened to the curriculum planners. What I say is always, one of my primary things in education, once a learner becomes convinced that his or her learning is up to them, you wouldn't dare assign his homework what they're taking on for themselves. That is illustrated every day with these kids. And so I do know that I had in 2009 both hips replaced at the same time. I said, if I'm going under, I'm going under one. I'm not going to mess with it. I had no pain medication after the day of the surgery. I said, I don't need it. I don't want it. I was back on the tennis court in 2 months, working out. In 3 months, when my first competitive match in 3.5 years. I took surgery as a defeat. I tried every natural solution, and I've tried them all. Chromosome, which is works on dogs and didn't work on me. But what I did in rehab was set the bar much higher than my physical therapist. If you only set the bar where your physical therapist does, you're lost. You got to set the bar up here. They were setting it down here. And that's why I was able to go back. So I think once you take charge, once you just said your why are you here? What are you doing? Then that's what motivates willpower. It's not that most of us don't ever ask that question. Why am I this?
So that's a lot of what we do now. We get to work with some really cool people and across the board. And we are not a gym, it's a product. But every once in a while, when people have learned what I've gone through, they've come to me with their issue. And it becomes that one, from quadriplegic who's now walking again, taking her first steps. So really happy about that, to amputees, to MS, to all of these different conditions, to even somebody y'all know, Oak ankle. I think that's quite a story. But it's about that why. That's what I want to know. People will say, just motivated with your voice and you're so fierce and you get in it. That's because I've learned why. What's moving me? I think we all need to dig in on that. And it's from an athlete's perspective, that is a toxic thing that you're talking about education, we're told what to do and told what to think and all this stuff. It's something that needs to be a cultural change that needs to take place in this country, that we're dealing with young athletes, because the second that you're found out that you're a little bit special, it wasn't real hard to figure out, okay, I'm 7th grade, I'm 6'5", maybe. Okay, kid, you're gonna play football. Okay. Can I be a quarterback? So you're gonna put your hand in the dirt, son. So it was real easy for me, but I was told every step of the way, and that became a really difficult thing, as Autumn can attest to that. I mean, it took me a good 5 years to figure out who I was, because somebody told me what to do every second of the day. And that became who I was. And we all say that, by the way. It's, it's just a game, it's just what I do, it's not who I am. That's such a lot of crap. But you learn, once you go through, you learn, listen, no matter what your sport is, it is just a game. It is just a game. And I got news for you. Like, remember when Michael Jordan retired and everybody freaked out? What's going to happen in the NBA? It went on. Nobody's bigger than the game. Nobody's. Brett Favre, how are the Packers ever going to run? And new guys. It's not like it is so not like. But I look back on it now and I go, how silly was this? And I literally being thankful for that perspective of looking back. Wow, this is really just a silly game. It's just not life. It's not people. It's not these relationships with these people. That's the only thing that matters. Because listen, when you're looking back over your life, and I was at that place where when your life is threatened and you're thinking about, wow, this might be my last breath. You look at life differently. Totally different. So they're very cool for that.
Ryan, I'm so glad I audio recorded this because what you just said, if I could package that up and dispense it to the world and to every athlete I coach, it would make a world of difference. You just make my heart smile. Any last question? I know, what else could be addressed? I do want to give you guys some time to approach any of our expert panel members if you have any specific questions, but I had written in my outline to the experts, I had written my own little summary, and it just says, the body follows the mind, and the best thing you can do for recovery is get your mental game in order, or you are addressing the physical fallout of injury. Don't try to navigate this injury alone. You're the quarterback, as we've said, you're in charge, but you also need a good team. So focus on what you can do. Thank you guys for being here tonight in our last football panel.